What's up, everybody, and welcome on inside yet another edition of the Business of Social podcast powered by STN Digital. I'm your host, David Brickley. Each and every episode, we're keeping you up to date on the ever-changing, boy, oh boy, is it changing, the ever-changing social, marketing, digital landscape. We get into this episode, a little mini podcast edition, as there's a lot of news when it comes to social as of late, so I want to dive into it. If you follow me on Instagram and all the LinkedIns of the world, I'm at David J. Brickley on most platforms. I think David Brickley on TikTok and LinkedIn. But I recently kind of put out I would say a 60 or 90 second clip on all the things you need to know about TikTok. So I wanted to quickly go through that out here on the pod as well and kind of dive a little more deeper and get more of my thoughts on that and let you know where we are. As we record this today, it is Thursday, March 16th. So as you listen potentially in the future, obviously there may be some updates or changes when it comes to TikTok, which I want to start with, and all the news that is coming out about TikTok in the US and will they ban TikTok and will TikTok cease to exist and all the money we brands are spending on TikTok. Listen, everybody just take a breath. We're going to be okay. As we know, these news outlets tend to shock and awe, and they're built on sensationalism, and they think they're going to take away your TikTok. I mean, we have 113 million US users. This is a big deal. I don't know. What is that, Katie? Probably 20-30% of our entire US population is on TikTok. So, they know those headlines are going to get clicks when you use words like ban and Biden is thinking about this, or that. But I want to just remind you where we've been with TikTok when it comes to, again, I want to preface this by saying, think about it for a second. In the history of social media, specifically in the United States, every single platform, go back to MySpace, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all these platforms have been US-based companies ran by US-based founders and CEOs. We know the story of Zuckerberg in San Francisco with the flip-flops and starting as a startup, and we've heard all that stuff, right? This has really become fable at this point, and movies are built on it. This is why this is different. TikTok in Beijing, it's a Chinese-based company, and this is different for the United States. I mean, if you've ever watched some of these hearings that Congress has had with the likes of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, it's kind of embarrassing. I mean, it sounds like you're at the table with your 85-year-old grandmother, and she's like, what's it called, TikTok? This is what a lot of the politicians are kind of approaching social. It's new. They didn't grow up on it. It's scary. And not just regular social media. Factor in the geopolitical nature of TikTok and that the fact this is the first time ever that a social media platform has been this successful, not in the US. This is why the alarms are going off, whether they're justified or not. And it's somewhat understandable. But I want to take you back because these flags really went all the way back to 2020. We're in the middle of the pandemic. But President Trump did the same thing. He said, hey, I may think about banning and took measures to do so, this Chinese-based company, TikTok, of course. And the plan back then was for TikTok to sell to a U.S. business owner. So essentially, they ended up selling to Oracle and Walmart over Microsoft. Microsoft tended to be in the lead there. That deal was never completed. They went with Oracle and Walmart, but even that deal was never completed because the Trump-Biden kind of back and forth was happening. That transition was happening. The government pressure kind of stalled. And then in 2021, President Biden pretty much revoked that executive order that Trump put in to ban TikTok and WeChat, by the way. And TikTok kind of was chilling. They didn't really have to do anything. They weren't held to any type of standard, although there was a lot of investigations and a lot of noise coming out of government here locally. So as we fast forward, really March of this year, TikTok currently has 113 million active users monthly. 67% of 13 to 17-year-olds are on this platform. So again, this is why this is becoming such a big deal because sure, there's been, if you look at Weibo, for instance, which is kind of the Facebook equivalent over in China, and you look at some of these other apps, they've never been this successful in the United States. And this is why kind of the sirens are going off. So essentially, this bipartisan bill that a lot of you have read about is called the Restrict Act. It has nothing to do with TikTok necessarily, but basically what they're saying is they want the ability to dig in. And again, this is a first for the U.S. government to see the success of a mobile app or a platform or a social network like this. So they're trying to figure out what laws or what things that we can do to dig into it. And TikTok, because of that, during all this kind of hoopla, they said that they would work on this. So they entitled a project called Project Texas. They would involve US-based company Oracle and host all their data in the cloud in the United States, thinking that would be something that would really absolve them from having to worry about the Chinese data that would be kind of overseas, and the US couldn't really be protected in that way. Again, just from what I've read as well, technically the Chinese government can ask any Chinese company to look at their data. So that's what the US government is kind of pondering right now. Whether it's happening or not, there still is a chance that potentially China can use that to their advantage. If it got in the wrong hands, it wouldn't be too good. So I will say, if we look really at historical context, outright bans are very, very rare. I mean, there is cases where India did ban TikTok along with 58 other apps, back in 2020. There have been bans like on Facebook and Twitter in places like China, Iran, North Korea. But this is not something that happens very often, especially when you've reached scale in a country like this. So I said it back then, and we see the news that's coming out as of today as we record this on a Thursday, March 16th, like we said, that my expert opinion was the U.S. will force TikTok, much like they did back in 2020, to sell to a U.S. Party. So that way there's third-party oversight. All the U.S. user data is protected, and the Chinese government can never request it type thing. I just did not believe an outright ban would be likely. And as we fast forward, the latest on this, as we record this podcast, is the Biden administration does want the Chinese-owned TikTok to be sold. Obviously this demand would be unprecedented in a way, much like it was back in 2020. So this certainly will be met with legal challenges from TikTok. TikTok has came out and said that they're disappointed in the outcome. But at the end of the day, this is going to be something that most likely happens. TikTok did spend $1.5 billion in that Project Texas, firewall data farm, if you will, that would be based in the United States. But it sounds like so far that won't be good enough for the U.S. government based on the fears they have or maybe any investigation they have done. Again, there's a lot of legal battles that go involved in this. There may be some negotiation. There's a lot of things to be considered here. But again, I really believe there will not be a case where the U.S. Outright bans the app and it ceases to exist. Again, not only is that unprecedented in the United States, it's somewhat unprecedented globally. And ultimately, TikTok is so successful in the United States, it makes sense to figure out a U.S.-based partner to at least leverage that. Would you rather shut the whole thing down and not be able to reap all the benefits and assets? Or if you were forced, would you rather sell for goodness? I mean, what would the 113 million active users in TikTok even be worth when you look back at years and years ago? Instagram sold for $1 billion and all these companies are selling for billions and billions and billions of dollars. I just can't even imagine. And I haven't looked into it, probably should, how much I guess economists would even value the U.S. portion of TikTok, but it would be, I'm sure, the largest social network sale in the history of that. And I want to put a little thing more in perspective, because I don't think even us marketers sometimes remember that on a global basis, Facebook, 2.91 billion monthly users, YouTube, 2.5 billion, Instagram, 2 billion, almost exactly. TikTok is now at 1 billion, and all those platforms above them that I spoke about had a much better lead time. They started years and years and years prior to ByteDance, Musically, TikTok, however you want to call it in terms of that. But in terms of global users and US based, TikTok has more users than Snapchat, than Twitter. And I think a lot of us are more familiar maybe with Twitter or Snapchat. A lot of brands invest more in Twitter and Snap and just thinking about bringing on TikTok. But in terms of reach, in terms of monthly active users, this thing got big quick. And this is why it's kind of, got the, I guess, U.S. government more and more involved as we go through here. So that's the latest as we sit here today. I wanted to make sure, gave you guys my thoughts on it. And again, as brands, you guys are investing a lot on this platform. You're thinking of investing more. You're seeing a lot of success. You're reaching users. You're having a lot of fun with the content. And although this might get a little messy in courts and negotiations and things like that, ultimately, I think it will come to a resting place where nothing ever happens to the app, nothing is worried about in the App Store, but it becomes much more cleaner in terms of that data, so it can't be used against us. As that cybersecurity threat is something that all governments, right, are worried about as they go forward into the future. So that's the latest on TikTok. Feel free to stay tuned to my social media, STN social media, the podcast, of course. We'll continue to monitor it as we move forward. And then finally, I did want to kind of bring out a couple predictions that I wrote this probably, I don't know, I would say about 2 months ago or so, and we put it as a blog on the STN Digital website. And I wanted to make sure that we laid it down here on the podcast because I think it's something that all of you marketers and everybody listening should really focus on right now. And just wanted to talk it out with you fine folks. So a couple predictions here and things that I think all of you should really be thinking about as you head into Q2 and 2023 as a whole. So number one, I will say as a good segue, YouTube Shorts. Do not sleep on YouTube Shorts. And one thing I'll say is the success of TikTok has immediately resulted into Instagram Reels, into Facebook Reels, into YouTube Shorts. The vertical content distribution, if you will, that algorithm being able to feed you and becoming more user intuitive, that has changed pretty much every social network. I heard Spotify is going to be rolling out a similar user feed experience. And we've seen this, right, throughout history. If you study social media, you saw Twitter started hashtags, and then all the other social media accounts followed. Snapchat started 24-hour expiring stories. Here comes Instagram stories. They all copy each other. So the good news is when you invest in a TikTok early, you start to understand how that audience likes to interact with that content. And then all the other social media accounts tend to follow whatever's working on the competitor accounts. And then you can immediately leverage that. So the great news is if you're already on TikTok, you're seeing a lot of success and you're not necessarily taking advantage of YouTube and YouTube Shorts, this content can most likely be used across Reels, across YouTube Shorts, and may not need to be super heavily edited, much like the other features and other platforms. So I hope, and my prediction here is I think brands will finally put a bigger emphasis on YouTube. I mentioned earlier, right? You got Facebook globally, 2.91 billion. The next quote unquote social network, you can call it, I guess, a video network, but I call it a social network, especially now with YouTube Shorts, 2.5 billion. YouTube is always forgotten about with strategy. So many of our clients here at STN, so many RFPs I hear is we want to, increase Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We want to get better on Facebook, but they always forget about YouTube. And I just don't understand it because now you don't have to invest a huge video crew and maybe have that long format content that you think you had to have with the ability of YouTube Shorts. So again, often forgotten about, but the fact that this is now becoming more intuitive and looking closer to an Instagram or a TikTok, this is something you just simply can't forget about when it comes to your social strategy. So YouTube did announce last summer that Shorts is now being watched by over 1.5 billion logged in users every single month, less than 2 years after its launch. By comparison, TikTok announced 1 billion monthly users, like I mentioned earlier in the pod. That's September of 2021. It's grown a little bit since then. But YouTube Shorts, more users, more ability for reach. And as I always, talk about with you guys, these platforms continue to juice the algorithm on features they want to succeed. So you saw it with Facebook Live back in the day. You saw it with Instagram Stories. We're seeing it now with Instagram Reels. YouTube wants YouTube Shorts to succeed. It's easier to upload content. More content equals more ad dollars. More content equals more time spent on platform. You got to dig in and dive in anytime these networks release new features or do a large, version change of their user interface. It's so important as marketers to jump on this and take advantage of that. So this is just your reminder. You probably thought about it. I don't know how we show up on YouTube. It's YouTube Shorts I keep on hearing about. I've been scrolling on my YouTube myself, and I find myself on YouTube Shorts, and I think I'm on TikTok or potentially Instagram Reels, but it is YouTube Shorts. How can your brand, how can your company show up on that? And I think in 2023, if you're a smart brand and you want to take advantage of attention, you want to take advantage of 1.5 billion logged in users monthly, really think you should start about, even if it's very, very small. You can walk before you run. You can crawl before you walk if you want to, but you got to have a YouTube Short strategy. And really just don't forget about those 2.5 billion active users on YouTube globally, because it is a really special platform if you can take it seriously with your brand. All right, the second thing, and I have 3 for you. So that was the first one. YouTube Shorts is a new player in the game and a new player that you have to take advantage of as a brand. All right, number 2, AI is here to stay. I know you're probably sick of seeing the Twitter threads and all the folks talking about Chat GPT and OpenAI. This is changing the game by the day when it comes to all businesses. And I know even inside STN, we've started to use this for brainstorming, titles of the podcast and, writing blogs and being able to use that. I think where we're going as humans is you're not going to have to start from a blank canvas that much anymore when it comes to writing a large memo or writing a blog or writing a dissertation. This is becoming mainstream now and a tool that all professionals can use to be more efficient in your day-to-day work. If you heard about it, but you haven't really dug in, I'm telling you, every single employee in the world needs to go on YouTube and get the 101s of Chat GPT, make yourself an account, and just play with it a little bit. You are going to become more efficient. Your boss is going to be amazed about the work that you can create. It's going to make you look smarter. It's going to make you work smarter, not harder. This doesn't fully replace humans. This doesn't really fully replace the need for so many positions across so many companies, but it really allows you to get that head start and not have to work, like I said, from that blank canvas. So you can get a head start on copywriting, researching, coding, etc. There's now, Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel plugins where you can pull data from LinkedIn and the web and make sure that they're pulling in all this data. This is changing the game. It's super important as marketers that we get on top of this and just use it to be more efficient, use it for research. It's not perfect. It never will be, but this stuff is growing day by day. And, just recently this week as we record this podcast as well, Chat GPT 4 is more sophisticated. They've added more information. The machine learning is learning. You can really consider this part assistant in a sense in a lot of stuff you do. So that's my homework. Number 1. And I'll get to my third here in a second. But number 1, how does your brand show up on YouTube and YouTube Shorts specifically? You got to get a plan for me by the end of this year. Number 2, your homework. Start using Chat GPT. If you don't know about it, watch that 10-minute 101 video on YouTube and start to play with it, because I guarantee you, you're going to become 8 to 9% more efficient in your day-to-day work just by utilizing the tool. And my third tip here is you've seen it, right? You've seen with a lot of these, especially in tech and social, we have this huge pendulum shift where before on Wall Street, if you are a Facebook, a YouTube, a Netflix, all that Wall Street cared about, all that investors cared about, are you growing subscribers month over month? Every single quarter, are you hitting your subscribers ad quarterly? That changed. That changed once interest rates came up. That changed once the economy kind of flipped a little bit. And now investors are asking, how profitable are you? Well, that's a completely opposite goal to attain. And you see guys like Bob Iger at Disney. You see Mark Zuckerberg. I think he's laid off 15 to 20% of his entire staff. When it was all about getting subscribers, the Netflixes of the world, the Disney Pluses, the streamers, they were investing, Netflix, I think $13 billion a year in content. You can't do that and become a really, really profitable company. But when the metric is I want to hit subscribers and that's all you care about, you just throw money at the problem and you see those subscribers grow, your stock price grows, the investment ability goes, and that's all you really care about. But again, that's a big shift for investors, and big money say, yeah, subscribers are great now, but we care more about profit. Oh, well, we got to relook at our whole business model. We got to restructure this entire thing. We got to cut things and double down on things that are working. So I want to make sure that we understand the dynamic and the economy that we're in, not so much being profitable because, money is tight necessarily, but when investors and stockholders are really determining your value as a company and they switch the target, if you will, the bullseye has switched from add monthly subscribers if you're a social network or streamer to now we want to see profit, that we're going to see a shift over the next 12 to 24 months of these companies changing the game. And all companies now are really looking at the KPIs and the accountabilities and how it affects the bottom line. And while, during COVID, there was a lot of money, trillions of dollars that were pumped into the US government. Money was a lot easier to come by. Interest rates were lower than they ever been before. And you didn't really have to focus on the vitals of running a company. Me being a small business owner, I've always understood the power of cash, the ability to, save money for a rainy day, the importance of being profitable, the importance of your cash flow. Cash is king, all those different things. But a lot of these companies, Twitter took 13 years to make $1 and become profitable. So many of these companies started with venture capital, did not have a profit-based model. That was nowhere near really their goals. All they cared about was subscribers. Now that pendulum is shifting. Maybe the pendulum shifts a little bit more back in that direction once interest rates come down in a year or two. But it's important to know our industry. That's why you're seeing so much movement. That's why you're seeing layoffs, because that performance-driven profitability is now affecting some of the businesses and companies that got super bloated over the last 5 to 10 years because they are being rewarded for a metric that had nothing to do with profit. So not so much homework there on that third one, but I think it's important to know as we, navigate the next, 6, 12, 18 months as the government is trying to slow down inflation and adjust the interest rates and all those things. So I hope that was valuable. Those are some things that were on my mind, and I wanted to make sure us as marketers were staying on the same page together for a little Business of Social mini pod. Feel free to check us out on YouTube, Spotify, all those amazing platforms, Apple Podcasts, and leave a review if you find any of this useful at all. And make sure, my homework, Tony, keep an eye on TikTok, of course. AI is here to stay. And what is your strategy for YouTube Shorts? Hey, if this inspires you, feel free to email me, david@stn.digital, and say, David, I appreciate it, man. I was thinking about it, and you pushed me over the edge. I always appreciate getting those texts and those emails from all the amazing listeners. Okay, thanks so much to Ellen for the research. Thanks to KDO for all the technical producing in the back end. This has been yet another edition of the Business of Social podcast. It's all been powered by STN Digital, and my name is David Brickley.